When it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind Around with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind Around for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind Around for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the mic.
Well, hello everyone. It is Rewind to Raw time. John Pollock with Wai Ting.
I'm here. Doing great. I'm doing really well. How are you?
I didn't even ask you. You assumed I was curious.
I'm sorry. I think we talked over each other, so I just assumed you asked me.
I did not. I was a little thrown off. Right before we went live, I heard a, What was that from for you?
It's because it was taking so long to go live, and that was unusual. I also couldn't hear the song, so that was unusual as well.
Did you hear it just now?
No, I didn't.
Oh, so we're still dealing with this issue where I hear things perfectly and you don't.
Yeah. Anyway,
this has affected multiple shows, but I am the connection to any audio components on this show.
You're my ears. You're my eyes. You're my ears. You're my brain.
You can see me, correct?
I could see you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Wai, how are you?
Doing great. I'm doing very well. I had a good weekend. It's my son's second birthday, so
tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow, yeah. But we had a nice little party, with family on Sunday. So yeah, how could you not be in a good mood?
I went to the Blue Jays game. I had a great time. We have a horrible team, but it was a lot of fun.
That who cares about the score? As long as your kids actually had fun, right?
They had a great time. They lasted till the end. They stayed after. It was this was definitely a concern if they were going to make it through 9 innings, but they did.
So they got this thing where they let the kids run the field, right?
They let them onto the field afterwards. You sign up for, it's free for kids to be able to go down, and they put you into groups, and it had to have been like thousands lined up. There were 38,000 people at this game on Sunday, and so the kids are like, I couldn't believe how fast they move you, and you get to run the bases, and yeah, it was a good time. Like, honestly, the Rogers Center is, now that I've had at least a small sample of some other ballparks, like, we have a pretty great ballpark now with the Rogers Center and with the upgrades. Like, it's a great place to watch baseball, and that was not always the case at the Sky Dome. That was just this very, very empty. It just had no oomph to it. It was just this giant box that you watch baseball in.
I never thought that there was anything wrong with it. I guess because I hadn't really ventured out to too many other parks. But I now get the sense that when people think about the greatest, I guess, baseball arenas, they think about places with more of sort of a personality, I would say. So something that's a bit more kind of cultural and attached to its surroundings. Whereas I do understand now the Sky Dome being more of a concrete box, really more of a sort of a convention center, I would say.
Yes. So we did some proper preparation for this game. We decided, man, can we find a team that's worse than the Blue Jays? The answer was yes. We could find the Oakland A's. So we went and the Oakland A's demolished this Toronto Blue Jays team. So I mean, there you have it. That was the recap of the game.
I mean, you could coach your kids to maybe take a page out of Dad's sports fandom and cheer against the home team.
Well, I don't think they even had a clue who was playing and who won, but they had a pretty good time.
Okay. Well, when are you taking them to a Leafs game next?
I'm not going to put them through that. That's just not going to happen. I'll take them to a Sabres game. I'm going to raise them to become fans of the Sabres. We'll cross the border and go to Buffalo for that. Okay. Better chance than this team.
Well, the tickets will be cheaper for sure.
They would absolutely be cheaper. Probably have a more entertaining time. All right. Well, there you go. That was our weekend, brought to you by postwrestling.com and chopped-tees.com/postwrestling for all your perfect needs to attend whatever sporting event you would like, for whatever life event you want, and always a great birthday present, whether you're turning 2 or 22. chopped-tees.com/postwrestling.
Great ad. We didn't even know we were going to do. Excellent.
That's what you get when you're competing for the top of the G1 Climax contest, okay, which Chop T is in the running, could walk away with this, but John Pollock, the Hiroki Goto of this contest, I'm not dead yet.
I gotta say, like, you know, the contest is sponsored by Chop-Tees.com.
There's a definite conflict of interest in this year's contest. Like,
Yeah,
what's he gonna do? He's gonna self-postage, like send something to himself. Like, what's gonna happen if he wins?
Truthfully, like it's C block. If you win C block, you don't win anything.
Okay, that's right. So,
but it's just bragging rights, and I guess that's enough. And I guess advertising that's important too.
well, yes, yeah, you're seeing the benefits
Greatest
of
prize of
sponsoring
all.
our contest.
Yeah, but look at Chris Elliott at the very top here.
Look at
Now
this
he's not
tied. Tom Williams, right there.
Tom Williams and Chris Elliott are at the very top of our listener standings, 57 points each. I mean, I don't know if anybody's catching them, but who's going to win among these two?
I mean, it ends with Wednesday, right? This does not include, or does this include the playoffs?
If
It does.
there's a
it does.
tiebreaker.
If there's a tiebreaker, so we might get a winner after Wednesday's B block show.
Correct. Yeah. Now, do they technically get points if they win playoff matches? Do they count towards point totals officially or no? I don't think so, right?
I'm not the arbiter of this contest. I just submitted my picks.
Ask,
but
yeah.
I don't think I will have to worry about that at the end, but we'll see. The C block is it's a close race.
The
It's a close
post-family
race here.
C block standings, while we're updating everybody, thank you very much again, Chris Engler, for updating these. Postwrestling.com/G1 if you want to see where you're at. John Cena sits at the very top with 50 points. Okay. But just right behind him are Brad the Archivist, Chop Tees, and also Eric Marcotte. You're not far behind, John. You're in fourth place. So if this was the playoffs, you would be making the playoffs.
Would I? No, I wouldn't.
You're in fifth place. You're in
Yeah,
fifth place.
I don't think
Which
I
you
would be in. This is going to be tough. It's
yeah.
going to be tough to make up these points in the final day. But we will see. We will see.
We will see.
We're shooting for a top 3 finish. We'll see if we can.
You'll
if we
do.
can manage.
My goal is to just beat you. I'm at 46 points.
I'm
Braden
at 40.
Herring-
No, you're not catching me. That's not.
Come on,
possible.
that's only a difference of 2. Anyway, Braden
Why don't you go
Harrington-
for Rando Bot? Put a realistic expectation in front of you. Way. I don't want you to be disappointed. 'Cause
Okay,
I'm
fine.
coming in hot to this final night. Okay.
All right, well,
This
we'll
was
find out.
a big final night. Well, this week we have put out our first of 5 G1 podcasts. The coverage will wrap up this Sunday, but man, are we going to get you ready for the end of the G1 today? Bruce Lord and Eric Marcotte taking you through the final day of the A block round robin portion. That's up now at postwrestlingcafe.com, and then we've got more shows coming this week. On Wednesday, Wai Ting will be with Kate from Montreal. They will go through the final B block matches to determine which 3 are advancing to the playoffs. Wai and I, our one and only G1 show together, will happen this Thursday as we will review the quarterfinal matches. And that takes us into the weekend. Karen and I are going to do a free show for everyone on Saturday with a review of the semifinals. And then the final day is Sunday on the Cafe. It's a Cafe exclusive. Bruce Lord, Karen Peterson, and WH Park coming together to review the finals of G1 Climax 34.
Mm-hmm. And don't forget on the free feed, the NWA podcast with Nate Andrew, Chris, and Two-Way Ray himself. What a way to cap off an incredible G1 run by having.
I mean, every month they do their own personal G1 on a Sunday night, and this Sunday will be no different. Lots to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This month, yes, absolutely.
So all of that can be found postwrestling.com and postwrestlingcafe.com to follow along with everything that's going on. And what is going on, the latest involving the Janel Grant case. So today, we have brought you up to speed on what has happened over the past month. There was a bill of discovery filed by Janel Grant seeking the medical records from Carlon Colker and the Peak Wellness Clinic. Then last week, we got the response from Carlon Colker and the facility that were refuting all of these claims and issuing their own bill of discovery for documents. So today, it was Janel Grant's turn to file multiple motions to strike the bill of discovery that Colker and company have filed, a special motion to dismiss, and a motion for sanctions. So in as simple language as possible, what Janel Grant's side is stating is that this this complaint that was issued last week, they are trying to intimidate Grant to drop her original petition to get the medical records, and is stating that last week's complaint, Colker failed to plead probable cause for any of the claims that he was bringing up that he was allegedly a victim of, whether it be defamation, tortious interference with business relations, or infliction of emotional distress, stating basically did not make any kind of a case that holds water regarding what he is alleging happened by Janel Grant filing this original bill. So they are stating that any comments or accusations made by Janel Grant, she has litigation privilege by filing those with the court system. And conversely, anything that was written in the press, they have fair report privilege, and she did not write any of those articles, so cannot be held in terms of like the defamation side. Also stated this was filed last week, the complaint in bad faith. Also complained about the fact that despite having counsel and legal representation that they know of, they sent someone to deliver this complaint to Janel Grant's home. And that was an issue that was brought up here. And also noting that it says here, Ms. Grant stands by all the statements made in the Bill of Discovery and Federal Action Complaint, which she provided a true and accurate accounting of the horrific mistreatment she suffered at the hands of certain powerful men, including Dr. Colker. And we finally did get the confirmation in this filing today. Although they are not named defendants, Dr. Colker and Peak Wellness are discussed throughout the Federal Action Complaint under the pseudonyms Celebrity Doctor and Alternative Clinic, respectively. Additionally, an employee of Peak Wellness, referred to in the federal action as, quote, physical therapist, was involved in several instances of sexual abuse with McMahon against Ms. Grant. Regardless, statements made in the federal action are equally protected by the litigation privilege. So that does connect, like we all made that assumption, but they had not stated this as fact until this filing today. I do want to stress that when the allegation of sexual assault is mentioned in there, that is a separate person at Peak Wellness who we do not know. She is not accusing Colker of that, just if people are confused by the different identifications here. And basically what Grant is looking for is to get her motion to strike the entirety of Colker's Bill of Discovery last week, where he's trying to get all these documents because he did not state a claim or find any probable cause. She wants to be granted a special motion to dismiss the Bill of Discovery under Connecticut's anti-SLAPP law and deny all relief that the plaintiffs are looking for, and award the costs and attorney fees to Ms. Grant, awarding treble damages to Ms. Grant, and grant any other further relief that the court finds just and proper. So we did reach out to Colker's lawyers if they had anything to respond with. They did not. They declined to comment to us, stating that they would be addressing this in court, essentially, is what they said. So that is the latest, that this continued fight is just going back and forth, and it looks as though both sides are looking for damages from the other. And I guess that's the next step in all of this. And it boils down to these records. And Janel Grant is stating, had you just complied and given these records, we wouldn't have had to go through all of this. But they called it stonewalled. They've been stonewalled throughout this process, throughout this year, to gain these medical records.
This just sounds like it's like a very public game of tag right now.
This was a very lengthy, this was 24 pages that they filed today in like grand detail in terms of this response. And this only came out just a couple of days ago, the complaint from Colker. So we will see. It feels as though it's like volleyball going back and forth. And obviously it certainly feels like this is going to end up in court because there is such a dispute between these two sides. And both of them are extremely adamant on their point of view. Let's go on to the G1. And we learned over the weekend, Yuya Uemura is out of his final B block match. He had the match with Yota Tsuji on Friday, and he's out due to an arm injury, and thus he will be forfeiting his final match with Oleg Boltin. So both Uemura and Boltin will finish with 8 points. With Uemura, that's one where, he beat Tsuji and was absolutely going to be a player in this final night coming up on Wednesday, which is unfortunate. And you always wonder, especially when you're down to the wire, how much this might have affected plans, if this impacted plans at all. But unfortunate, because Yuya Uemura had a great tournament overall.
Yeah. The match itself was definitely a gutsy performance. I guess the type of arm injury that you would expect that he wasn't severe enough for them to completely stop the match, but they finished the match anyway and just kind of forced their way into a pinfall. I don't know if many of us would have expected Uemura to go on to win the tournament anyway. So I'm if there's an injury to happen in this G1, I guess they should be thankful that it happened towards the end and that it was to somebody that I guess they could replace without that much damage to, I guess, the outcome of the tournament itself.
Well, today's show was the final A block matches. So we've got Zack Sabre Jr. not just winning the block, pretty much running away with it, because he could have lost his match to Sonata today and still would have finished in first place. But they're not doing this deal like you've seen so often where it's like we're giving stuff to the losers at the end. Like Sonata could have won this and it's his big moment of the tournament, even in being eliminated. But instead we're building Zack up to be this dominant force. So they gave him another win. And man, Zack's matches between Gabe Kidd and Sonata back to back, these matches were spectacular. And the Sonata match today, it was definitely Sonata's best match of the tournament. These two just had a grappling heavy matchup and it was terrific. Really great match. So Zack finishes the block with 14 points, finishing in first place, and then joining him in the playoffs will be Shingo Takagi and the Great Okan, who upset Tetsuya Naito in the main event. So Takagi and Okan both advance with 10 points each, and Evil had been eliminated earlier in the show by Shota Umino, and then Naito was eliminated because of his loss to Great Okan. So on Thursday, it will be Takagi against Great Okan, and the winner faces Zack Sabre Jr. on Saturday.
Yeah, well, given the tournament format this year and the playoff format this year, I think it makes sense to make your guys look really strong heading into it. Because he was so dominant in the blocks, I wonder if that puts any doubt into how he'll do in the playoffs. But I think Zack still remains a heavy favorite for a lot of people. I'm very curious to know if Naito was supposed to go any deeper into the playoff rounds, because he doesn't even finish, at this point, top 3 in his own block. And that's kind of unusual for, I suppose, the champion. But I wonder how much of that, was due to just the booking as originally intended, or how much of it might be due to limitations in his body.
Who was the MVP of the A block for you?
So I haven't seen every match, so I can't fully say. But I think from what I have seen, I can tell you maybe. So Zack, I think, is always dependable, and I think he's even shown himself to, be an evolved version of, I think, how great he has been in previous G1s. Shingo Takagi, always reliable, but I look at Gabe Kidd as, to me, the breakout of that cluster, at least in A block.
Yeah, the A block is the one that, I mean, you look at this and I would place Zack and Shingo as kind of your 1-2, but in terms of the guy that took the greatest leap in this tournament, it was Gabe Kidd. I thought that he, to the point that I think it was unfortunate that here on this final day, he wasn't even still alive in the tournament, but that's how the booking works out. And the A block, I think it was greatly hindered by everything involving Evil. And today was the big match where everything falls apart for Evil at the end and Umino overcomes all the odds. But I can't say it was all that, like, it was a good match, but it never got to the level where it was like, wow, this was worth the struggle to get to this moment at the end. I just thought the harm the harm overshadowed the glory at the end for Shota Umino to get this win.
In a year where I think so much is they're making such a big attempt at resetting the deck and like propping up so many new guys, and I think taking away maybe what would have been not so well reviewed from prior G1s, like the overinflated field. It's interesting to see Gato continue to push House of Torture the exact same way and book their matches the exact same way.
Yeah, there's also an interesting thread is that the 3 to qualify at the top of the A block, Shota Umino beat all three of them. So
Okay,
that's an interesting trivia note for Shota Umino here. So Zach, his only losses were to Umino and Takagi. Those were his two losses in the A block. Now the B block on Wednesday, it will have Konosuke Takeshita against Ren Narita, Jeff Cobb against Yota Tsuji, Hiroki Goto against Hanare, and El Phantasmo against David Finlay. Only 4 matches because of Uemura and Bolton being out. So Bolton gets those 2 points, and they're done. Uemura and Bolton finish with 8 points. And as you can see here, if Finlay, Narita, and Jeff Cobb, who are all in separate matches, all they need is 1 point, and they clinch. But there's other scenarios, too, where Goto, Takeshita, and Yota Tsuji could potentially advance. It's a bit more involved in the math, but if Tsuji beats Jeff Cobb, he would have wins against Cobb, Finlay, and Narita. So you would need some losses there, but he's alive. Takeshita, if he were to beat Narita, he would have wins against Cobb and Narita and be in a pretty strong position. And then Goto, I really had to dig here and actually seek out Chris Sampson to break this down for me. But Goto, he needs to beat Hanare, Narita needs to beat Takeshita, and then Cobb and Finlay have to lose. That's a lot of dominoes to fall in terms of booking. But Goto is technically alive, that he could advance here. So it's possible. This one has a million different scenarios, and pretty much all 4 matches have importance on Wednesday.
It's been by far the more interesting block, both in terms of in-ring content and I guess now towards the end with the math. It's hard for me to see Goto's G1 just end, without making it to the playoffs. He has been, you could say, the breakout of B block. So I hope he goes through with whatever scenario he has.
Yeah, we'll see what happens on Wednesday. There's interesting potential. You have 6 people fighting for 3 spots, so it's way more dramatic than today's A block was, even though you had several people alive today. So that's happening Wednesday, and then again, quarterfinals Thursday, semifinals Saturday, and the finals on Sunday, and then another G1 season in the books. SmackDown on Friday with the return of Roman Reigns. They were up 4%, doing 2,269,000 viewers, and up 7% in the demo at a 0.64. So Reigns did not spike things. This was their last week against the Olympics, which did 11 million viewers from 8 till 9, and then 12 million viewers between 9 and 11 going against Fox. But SmackDown was third for the night in the demo behind the Olympics, and 5th in overall viewership behind the Olympics and Fox News. So it was SmackDown's best number in 3 weeks, and they were also preempted in several markets because of the NFL preseason game. So they had that going against them as well on Friday. Rampage, 219,000 viewers and a 0.09 compared to the previous week, 209,000 and a 0.07. So a small increase in Rampage on Friday night. And the last notes here are NXT Tuesday night. It will be Obafemi defending the North American title against who? Will it be Otis? Will it be somebody else? We will find out. That's a quite the trip to take when you have a big title defense in Florida. Let's fly to Texas the night before.
Well, he got on TV.
I guess so.
Something.
Do you have to buy a ticket? Or do you get a comp?
Probably got a comp, I would say. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tony D'Angelo defends the Heritage Cup against Charlie Dempsey. Axiom and Nathan Frazier against Andre Chase and Ridge Holland for the tag titles, and Eddie Thorpe versus Lexis King. Wednesday's Dynamite, Norfolk, Virginia. The Young Bucks against the Acclaimed for the AEW tag titles. Swerve Strickland against Wheeler Yuta. I feel there will be blood. Hangman Page against Jay Lethal. Mercedes Moné against Hikaru Shida for the TBS title. Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, and Orange Cassidy in a 3-way match. The winner gets to be number 1 in the Casino Gauntlet at All In, where you do have the advantage because you can win at any point in the match. You don't have to wait for whoever to enter. And then we have a film by Mariah May and a face-to-face between Kazuchika Okada and Claudio Castagnoli. I'd prefer a film by Kazuchika Okada.
Sure. Yeah, I would too. Like, you look at this graphic with Mariah May, there's no way you could tell me that you could tell the difference between her and Toni Storm.
No, that's uncanny.
Look at this.
I would, if the text was not there, I would definitely believe that was Toni Storm. Mm-hmm. All right, that's Wednesday. How do you like this lineup?
Yeah, Average, you know, and I say that because I think at this point we in order for like a big difference to be made, well, I mean the Olympics are over, so I think that might account for a big thing. But you know, I'm also comparing it to the Dynamites of several weeks ago that I think had something like legitimately exciting about every single one. These feel a bit more standard. I'm sure there'll be good matches, but I think no results that are really in doubt, nor like segments that I think are that anticipated.
I feel they need like some really big segments, promos going into All In. This is the last week of U.S. shows because next week they have the shows in Wales going into the weekend. I mean, you would be hoping for a pretty hot crowd in Cardiff next week going into All In.
That's a big draw for me, just to kind of see what AEW looks like over there. Yeah.
Okay. And Wai and I will be live right after Dynamite this coming Wednesday, so look out for that. Tonight we are at the Moody Center, the most unimpressed arena out there. Nothing makes this arena happy. From Austin, Texas, 12,269 tickets, according to WrestleTix. Sold out. Michael Cole stating over 13,000. And Rhea Ripley is out to start the show. And she's felt a lot of things since SummerSlam. She's felt embarrassed, heartbreak, but now she's just pissed off. Dominic stabbed me in the back, but Dominic, and this is something you've probably heard before, it just wasn't deep enough. And it took about 5 seconds for this crowd to realize what she was talking about. And says, Liv Morgan, you can't run forever. And then Dominic and Liv appear in the crowd. And Dominic explains he's a man. And Liv lets him play video games whenever he wants. And Liv, help me beat my deadbeat dad. And Rhea states that she's proud of Dominic. She just wanted to see him beat Ray on his own, but that's the last decision you're ever going to make. Liv then says that Rhea has nothing. Your family is 1,000,000 miles away. I took your family in the Judgment Day and your title, and says that all the things you loved are mine now. Rhea says, all you took away were my weak links, but I'm still standing and you're going to have to kill me to stop me. And Damian Priest then appears in the crowd behind Dominic and Liv, and they just run. And Dominic is caught. Liv jumps onto his back, and Rhea joins in. They brawl in the concourse and make their way back to the ring, where Carlito runs in and gets clotheslined to the floor as Damian Priest stands tall. And this was our 17-minute open to Raw.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that seems kind of typical, right, for an opening segment on Raw. Big, long talking segment. I thought it was a really hot start to the show. I thought Austin was a terrific crowd all throughout the night. And they certainly were for, I think, what many would argue as the hottest program in all of the WWE right now. I didn't love seeing Ripley start things off by playing this heartbroken version of herself. It just seems so uncharacteristic for her. Like, for one thing, we never really got the sense that she was in love with Dominic. Like, their entire relationship has been one that kind of like came across as manipulation rather than anything true. So that's making it more difficult for me to buy that she's actually heartbroken about it. I also sense the audience. This was kind of unusual hearing the audience chanting "what" at Rhea Ripley, and this was when Rhea was kind of giving Dominic credit for being proud of like his accomplishments and all that. And it just seemed like maybe this audience didn't want to hear her give any sort of credit to Dominic.
This crowd was very quick to what, which maybe given the name of the city, we should have been prepared for.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. It could have just been, they wanted to chant what at any opportunity. But I don't love seeing a heartbroken Rhea, but I also recognize that this is their path for setting her on a course for revenge. And I thought the crowd's responses were massive. One thing's got physical with her and Damian Priest and everybody else involved. So at this point, it's just about sort of dragging out this cat and mouse game and taking us all for the ride. And thus far, like, none of it has felt tired. I think everything's progressing and getting hotter and hotter and hotter every single week.
So that takes us into Damian Priest against Carlito. And this is when the crowd caught their breath from the first 17 minutes. Pat McAfee references WWC, Carlito's father's promotion. Priest hits a flatliner, and then they go to commercial break. I was like, does this match require 2 segments? And apparently it does. We come back. Priest is absorbing strikes, fires back with a spinning heel kick, and they're really like loading up on a lot of his like kick-based offense and kind of making more of a focus on that. He hits the broken arrow, the straps come down, and hits the South of Heaven to win this match in 9 minutes and 21 seconds. And this was Damian Priest and an opponent.
Yeah, I thought the match was pretty uninteresting. I think Carlito is great in this role as essentially sort of like the clown of the Judgment Day. But man, his wrestling he hasn't found a way to kind of bring that same comedic appeal into his matches, let's just say. I think his wrestling feels so basic for 2024. They were trying to like sell the idea that Priest was like angered enough to like mount this massive comeback, and really that was hard for me to buy because Carlito's offense looks so weak. So the idea that like, you know, your guy just coming off of a championship reign is in any way like threatened by Carlito, I thought was kind of tough to buy. And that's going to be trouble, I think, with him versus JD as well. You know, like at this point, I think we could say Priest is just going to go through all the members of Judgment Day. I expected them to do a lot more cheating, you know, handicap advantages for the Judgment Day, and maybe they're saving that for some of the matches later on.
So JD attacks him, and Baszler and Dominic run in when Ripley returns, and they flee. So she drops Carlito on her way to the ring, and the two then corner Baszler, and he runs off as Priest nails JD with a super kick and the South of Heaven, and then Priest and Rhea are left in the ring, so they hug. And Dominic then comes off the top as they're hugging, and Priest catches him by the throat and sends him to Rhea for the riptide, but Liv pulls Dominic away, and obviously that is probably our big spot for Bash in Berlin, is him taking the riptide that they will tease. And yeah, this was announced for Bash in Berlin, a mixed tag match with Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley against Liv Morgan and Dominic.
I think they're pacing all of this really well. You know, again, playing cat and mouse throughout these weeks just to really build up anticipation for like the sort of physical confrontation between these participants. And a tag match for the Berlin pay-per-view, I think is a good way to pace things until their eventual singles matches. So it's going to get a massive reaction on the show, I'm sure.
Alpha Academy are warming up in the back, and Ivy Nile wants to speak to Maxine and thinks that Maxine shouldn't go out there tonight and suggests Maxine join American Made, and Maxine is not interested in this at all. The Wyatt Six send in their latest VHS, and it's Bo Dallas saying how everything has come full circle. A lot of emotions, especially last week in Baltimore, where it all started. And he says he was there, as we see visuals of Bray Wyatt. And he said that something big is happening. And we hear him just state, "My life for you," over and over, with Bo Dallas and Uncle Howdy's voices overtop one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And our only Wyatt involvement on this week's show.
And I think that's wise. You know, this is a group that you definitely don't want to overexpose. You don't want to underexpose them, and you don't want to give them sort of repetitive, even like videos as well produced as these are. You can't just rely on them. I thought that was one of the sort of mistakes they made with Bray for some of his iterations of his characters, where they might over rely on a Firefly Funhouse without giving us enough in-ring content to just kind of vary things up and to give us actually some point to the things that they were saying. They're breaking things up really well here. You know, you're getting videos, and then we finally got our in-ring action. Back to the video this week, hopefully with the direction towards another in-ring match, as I guess was teased by Chad Gable later on today.
Then it's on to Xavier Woods running into Kofi Kingston and Odyssey Jones, who are hanging out. And Kofi says, since Odyssey had our back last week, tonight we're going to have his back. And Woods is all reluctant and saying, "Oh, really? Oh, are we?" He's like, yeah, we're going to go to the ring. And then Kofi remarks that, "Oh, you're wearing that shirt. We should have gotten you this other shirt. I guess this is the New Day shirt."
Which is just like it's the NWO parody shirt, I suppose. That is to me the laziest wrestling parody somebody could make. But
wasn't Odyssey just wearing this other shirt last week? That was the one he had on last week, and now he's got the different one.
He didn't get the memo, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I think Kofi should have been wearing the same shirt as Odyssey Jones if he wanted to show, or if they were trying to show that two of them were thinking one way and Woods was left out.
Odyssey Jones against Vincent Winey. Winey has had 7 matches. So we had Winey in Moody Center.
This is the guy's real name?
Oh, yeah. This
Vincent
is an NXT
Winey.
guy. Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard of him.
Yeah, well, he's not too well known, I would say, at this point in his
He's
career.
had 7 matches, period?
Yes.
Is he
March.
an NIL guy?
He was a football player, so yeah, he was
Okay.
just signed.
Wow.
Winey attacks him at the bell. He definitely needs a new ring name, by the way. Jones just tosses him with a Beal and hits these rolling sentons, then an avalanche. Winey goes after the knee and then gets caught with a sidewalk slam, and Jones wins in 1:46. Woods is not all that enthusiastic, nor was I. The Final Testament come out.
I don't think he looked bad. I thought he looked fine.
It was
for a big
fine.
guy.
It was nothing to
Like, he's not doing, moonsaults or anything. I don't think he's supposed to. He's clearly kind of, being coached to wrestle like a pretty stereotypical big man. I thought, like, the sidewalk slam looked impressive enough. But this really was more of a backdrop to tell the Woods and Final Testament story.
Yes, we had, to my observation, the lone visual tribute for Kevin Sullivan was Paul Ellering coming out with like the X written on his forehead. And Cross states that Kofi Kingston is using Odyssey Jones to replace Big E. But Woods sees the truth. It's actually Kofi trying to replace Woods. So Woods responds, stating, "You can't drive a wedge between us." And he goes to issue a tag challenge for next week, but Kofi interrupts, stating, "We just know the others are going to get involved, so let's make it a 6-man tag with Odyssey Jones." So Cross accepts, and then Kingston goes to call them the Final Testicle.
Yes, he does. Mm-hmm.
And he was corrected by Xavier Woods. They are the Final Testament.
Yeah. I can never tell how you feel about these things because, like, I think your recap is just like,
What are you
it
trying to
can't
read?
help but be sarcastic.
This is the best
and it's
program on
hilarious.
Raw.
That's why we love it. But I can never tell like your opinion. If you think all of
What
this
do you
is
think
ridiculous.
my opinion is?
I don't
what
know.
am
I'm not really sure. I think you love it. I think this is your
I
favorite
can't even
storyline of the
I
year.
can't like before it was like this thing is just going in circles. I can't argue it's going in circles. There's at least a direction it's going in now. So I can't be as negative as I used to be about this. I'm not interested. Even as there's a purpose to this, it's moving. There is some movement in this story, but I just feel like I've been watching these two groups for a year talking and wrestling and Final Testament losing, and I just don't care.
I'll definitely say I think they started way too early without knowing what exactly they wanted to do with these two groups. You've had Cross tease the wanting to drive a wedge between Kofi and Woods for a long time, but I think they waited too long to really get to this. This to me finally feels like they're getting to an interesting place with the pieces finally falling into place. And they're finding like individual voices and unique character dynamics between them. I'm really getting a kick out of Kofi Kingston just like really hamming things up, just essentially kind of like being this like oblivious, over enthusiastic like member of the New Day, which is kind of like what all the New Day members were at one point, but like he's kind of like taking it to another level. And of course he's contrasted by Xavier Woods, who's kind of like a more depressed version of his usual self. And I just get a real kick out of like Kofi, for instance, like charging up for that big announcement of the New Day teaming up with Odyssey Jones, with the specific knowledge that this audience is going to meet it with like a flat reaction, and they certainly did. So I thought that was like really amusing to see that they're purposely like framing Odyssey Jones as like a disappointing sort of like addition to the New Day. Now, I do think in the end they're going to try to make Odyssey Jones out of this. And for that reason, I think you can't just have him feel like Lance Von Erich coming out of it all. I expect that he's going to turn heel and maybe Kofi will join him. So we'll see where it goes. This, John, I don't know if you can still hear me. I think you're frozen, and you're frozen on the most hilarious still image ever. I don't know if everybody else sees this. John is stuck looking like Uncle Howdy on this freeze frame. I'm almost tempted to tell you not to reconnect and we could just finish the rest of the show like this. But anyway, John got so much enjoyment out of this segment. Everybody, he's frozen with laughter, just basking in the pleasure of this Final Testament versus New Day feud. We've been on a great run, I would say, with technical issues, but without technical issues, but bound to see them once in a while. Have you completed your laughing fit, John Pollock?
I was just waiting for you to be done praising the storyline. Have you gotten it out of your system now? I don't have the patience for it. Yeah, they're not playing the subtlety game, Kofi and Xavier Woods, with these characters.
Is wrestling subtle? Is this a subtle medium, or at least the WWE version of wrestling? Is it subtle?
No, it's not. So they're hitting a home run.
It's not for everybody. But I'm enjoying it.
Well, next week we will get the 6-man tag, the Final Testicles against the New Day and Odyssey Jones. Pierce is on the phone and he says he's going to make something official by the end of tonight. And Drew enters.
And did we ever find out what that was?
I assume it was the mixed tag announcement because that came later.
I think so too. Right.
Pierce says that Punk is not there due to travel issues, but Drew says Punk is in the past and asks why is Randy Orton getting a title match, which is a great question to the Raw general manager. He says he got screwed 3 months ago and he did nothing about it. And here he is, the snake in the grass. I've been screwed over many times and no one's given me any help. So Drew says, I've got something to take care of tonight, but assures Adam Pearce he'll be on his best behavior. Alpha Academy against American-made Texas Tornado match. And this is where Otis comes down and he has words with Obafemi in the front row as Obafemi is just standing there with one of the few fans with a legitimate championship belt in the crowd. I would say the only fan.
You mean Obafemi?
He didn't have a replica belt. I mean, he just,
right.
Could have passed as like any other fan here, just with his holding his belt in the crowd. But yes.
I wonder how many people recognized him that were actually there.
Well, that were there, yeah. I mean, they at least did key him here, so you knew who this was. I don't know if this was the tease people were looking for to tune in on Tuesday night, but that was the tease for Otis.
Gave him some screen time, gave NXT some recognition, I guess.
Chad Gable sent a video as he's on his way back from France, where he went to the Olympics, and needed some culture after being chased by the Wyatt Six all these weeks. And he's been doing some recruiting, but he has some unfinished business with the Wyatts, and it starts now, and he will always be American-made. So maybe he's bringing home some Olympians.
Who would he bring?
I don't know. Not Gable Steveson.
No.
So they also gave a shout out to Masai Russell, who won the 100-meter hurdle, the gold in the 100-meter hurdles, and is part of the WWE's NIL class.
So what exactly does that mean? She was part of the inaugural NIL class, so she signed. What does that mean after all this?
I mean, like the NIL deals are, it's like you're basically sponsoring some of these athletes, and the idea
giving them
is
money.
Kind of, yeah. And then, you've got an in. If they want to pursue this afterwards, well, you've kind of established a relationship with them. I mean, a lot of these NIL athletes that they're going to sign to are not going to materialize into anything. I think it's just, you're going to recruit athletes that you're able to now because of like these NIL provisions. And if
like what is Masai Russell's commitment to the WWE? What does she have to give in exchange?
I don't think much. I don't think there's a whole lot. Like you can't go and sign with another wrestling company, for instance, but
okay.
She's done the Olympics, and now maybe she's going to want to go train at the Performance Center, and maybe she
but it's
wants
not like
to
she's
become a wrestler.
She's not forced to report to the Performance Center.
No, like there were like the Kavinder twins who were like the volleyball players. So it's like they showed up on NXT. They've done some stuff at the PC, but it's like they're not doing anything regularly. It's Like a lot of these NIL deals, like Mark Henry's son, who just got signed to one, like he's going to school for the next 4 years. So it's just like he's not going to be training pro wrestling during this period. He's going to be playing football.
Right. Okay.
So the match begins, and I think the tornado step was great for this kind of just out of control match. It was kind of funny because the Creeds are in there with Otis for like the first couple of minutes, and Tozawa's like working this just like a normal tag, waiting for a tag before I think it dawned on him that we don't need to do tags. So he just entered and became part of the match. But it was like 2-on-1 for like a very long period with Otis alone. Otis eventually presses Tozawa onto the Creeds on the floor. That sets up our commercial. And we come back. Tozawa hits a cannonball and is caught and powerbombed into the barricade. He comes back, hits a double DDT, and then Otis catches Julius for a world's strongest slam and caterpillar. Then Tozawa hits a Frankensteiner to Brutus and goes for a tope suicida, and his feet get caught on the ropes, and this guy just like crashes to the floor, but he just popped right up. He just kept going. He no-sold this fall.
Like I think Tozawa has one of the best suicide dives we see currently on North American television, or at least fastest. Between he and Darby Allin, I think it's a bit of a toss-up. He nails that in every single time I've seen him do it. For him to get his feet caught in, I would say, one of the loudest reactions that I've ever heard, Tozawa get, was sort of unfortunate for him, but. I mean, I don't think anybody holds anything against him.
It did not slow this guy down because he just got up and he just kept going. So Otis is lifted onto Julius's shoulders, but Otis superplexes Brutus while on the shoulders, and Tozawa hits a senton to everyone. So they're all down. Everyone's applauding when Ivy Nile appears, attacking Maxine, and applies the Dragon Sleeper. And this distracts Otis. Tozawa gets rolled up, and Julius provides leverage as Brutus pins Tozawa in 11:58. And Michael Cole mentioned the Diamond Mine, the origins here for the Creeds and Ivy Nile. But I thought this was a very entertaining match.
Yeah, really hot match. Some of the loudest reactions, I would say, all show. It's very impressive how this crowd is still connected to Otis and Tozawa and Maxine, even, I would say, for several weeks where the Gable and the Creeds were tied up with the Wyatts and weren't really giving the focus to Otis. They still love Otis. In fact, they might even love him more now than, they did back then. And Tozawa and Maxine are both kind of coming along for the ride. So now they're turning that energy into very good receptions for these tag team matches that I think are delivering, especially with the Creeds, who continue to be really impressive. So Ivy's turned heel now, and that just kind of cleans up the battle lines a little bit.
There was one funny moment where after this, Maxine is laid out on this desk and she's screaming in pain as Michael Cole is just standing there, and he's on camera and he's throwing to the next segment as Maxine's like just dead here on the desk. And at the end, Cole's, can we get some help for her, please? So he's just got to, pitch while this body is just laying in front of her.
The show must go on, man.
It's got to keep going. Yeah. Jackie Redmond, the sit down we've all waited for with Pete Dunne inside of the arena earlier today. And Pete Dunne cuts her off, says, I was never under Sheamus's wing. He held me down when I elevated Sheamus and allowed him to go on the run of a lifetime. And what did I get? A terrible nickname. If Sheamus was such a great guy, what happened to Ridge, huh? And and then warns Jackie, never call me Butch. And he says he will shut Sheamus up to ensure that he never hears that name again. And Jackie responds, well, Pete, I appreciate your honesty. So this man has been traumatized by horrible creative, and that is what is fueling this man here, the perfect icon for the Moody Center.
Sure. I would say enough justification for anybody to turn heel, being being called Butch, and essentially they've made no mention of the fact that he was essentially like a human dog.
They're not going that far. They're calling it a nickname. They're like, no, I was instructed to be a dog, literal dog.
I didn't speak. I only growled for several months.
They basically held me as though I needed a leash, but they didn't quite put me on a leash. But I would be like, this man would be like attacking.
Are we to believe in storyline that was all Sheamus's idea? Because if that's the case, then I think I'm about to turn.
Sheamus brainwashed him.
Yeah.
You know what? You know how they can turn this into their favor? Sheamus needs to come out with a new shirt that just reads Butch, and every time Pete Dunne sees it, he like snaps, and they start selling Butch t-shirts, and they make money off this god-awful gimmick.
Also, clearly, like, this interview was done to get the audience to chant Butch at Pete Dunne, which I love. I mean, it's something I think we all have. Like, we're gonna make fun of Pete Dunne for the rest of his career for this Butch phase. You know, like now we no longer think of Max Dupree when we think of LA Knight. Thank goodness. So maybe Pete Dunne can evolve out of this soon enough. But until then, like I still see Butch when I look at Pete Dunne, and I think to use that as heat to guarantee a reaction from this audience is very smart. It's actually some of the most interesting stuff that Pete Dunne has done this entire time.
And then we had the greatest video in WWE history. Okay, I don't want to hear anything about My Way or Desire videos. No, it's raw physics as they recap Bronson Reed's attack on Seth Rollins last week. An attack that lasted 2 minutes and 15 seconds as Bronson Reed drove himself off the top turnbuckle at a 45-degree angle. With his jump, this was the equivalent of 9 feet in the air and was the definition of force equals mass times acceleration. And that based on this size and this height, it was the equivalent of 1,715 pounds of pressure landing on Seth Rollins. Multiplied by 6 tsunamis, that's 10,290 pounds of impact. What is 10,290 pounds of impact for comparison? 2 small elephants, 10 wild boars, or 50 kangaroos, which neither Cole or Pat McAfee could keep a straight face reciting. I thought this was the greatest video of all time.
This was awesome. This was great.
10,290 pounds of impact.
We know how creative WWE likes to get with their math, okay? When it comes to their social media likes, certainly when it comes to their attendance figures, their whatever, listen to these sort of conference calls for the creative ways that they can expand on whatever number, whatever fact they might have. This is how we could exaggerate it to sound crazy. This is it being used, I think, in a creative way to help a wrestler. This was a much better, I would say, memorable way of doing essentially a recap of the segment last week. You're gaining further value from the great angle that you did, and you're continuing to drill the weight of that moment into the audience. So this was wonderfully done.
Yeah, I think the next their next big television deal should be broken down in the same way.
How many kangaroos? Yeah, is the Netflix deal?
Yeah, this was a 6x point of impact for Bronson Reed. This is how you write someone off TV in Seth Rollins. You do this video. This was amazing. Pierce asks Bronson Reed after this, "You think that was funny?" I'm like, I thought it was hilarious. I thought this was great. This was totally worth this fine that Reed had to pay. And Reed says, "I warned you last week that I was going to make an impact." And he impaled everyone's favorite star. And now I want an opponent tonight, or else I'll find another victim. Then Damage Control. We're down to 2 members, and they're stating we are still the most dominant force in the women's division. I'm like, you're at 50% right now. You're another injury away from being a singles act. And they state that they control the future. What the shooters, which we're going to get an updated name for, did to Dakota Kai, they will repay tenfold and take away their dreams, and you will never achieve glory as long as Damage Control runs Raw. And that is when we cut to the Pure Fusion Collective, which was one of my favorite groups on Dance Mix 93.
The Pure Fusion Collective. Yeah, this is Shayna, Zoey, and what's her name? Sonya's new name for their faction.
PFC.
We've been asking for a faction name all these weeks because so we could stop using Team Forehead, and they came up with something worse than Team Forehead. I
The
would say.
Pure Fusion Collective.
Like, what are they, chefs? What are they fusing here? Styles is, I guess, the explanation. They're fusing style.
Yes. Well,
They're purely fusing it,
I'm
as opposed to the impure fusions that we have.
Yeah. I'm thinking this was probably a pretty safe name when it came to anything that might be trademarked out there, like they've had with other female faction groups in the past.
Well, sure, yeah. The Pure Fusion Collective. I mean, maybe it'll catch on.
They call it a new era on Raw, and you're going to sit down and show respect. They should already be champions, Shayna proclaims, because she submitted Jade Cargill at Clash at the Castle. And that is our lead up to our tag.
So they are recognizing the Jade sort of phantom tap as now a storyline point. When I think it was
Oh, that's right. That was the phantom tap.
Yeah. When
right.
I think it was probably just a mistake in the match itself, but now they're using it to their advantage as they've done with Randy and Gunther, for instance.
Well, maybe they're going to headline a future premium live event off that.
Maybe. Mm-hmm.
Zayn and Sky against Baszler and Zoey Stark. Number 1 contenders match with Isla Dawn and Elba Fire at ringside. Also at ringside, shown in the crowd, Candice Michelle.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Nice to see her.
Michael Cole states that Dakota Kai is out 8 to 10 weeks with a torn meniscus and will undergo surgery. So that was obviously the reason for the beatdown of Dakota Kai last week. And yeah, unfortunate. She's going to be out for some time.
No update on Asuka's status?
No, I mean, she had her surgery, like a month ago? And then she was on the shows in Japan to appear.
Right.
But, after surgery, I would imagine she still has some time before she'll be back. So it's going to be these two for, the next 2 to 3 months.
Yeah. Which I guess if they're running with them as baby faces, to sort of be a man down, I don't think is the worst thing.
It would be really interesting if, if they're looking at this and they're without Dakota, they're without Asuka, and do you look at Julia as being somebody that would fit in right away on the main roster? As
when's the earliest you could appear?
I mean, her final match is coming up not all that long from now. It's like later this month.
It's possible, but I also get the sense they want to give her time in NXT, rather than just pushing her into the main roster so soon.
Well, they go through the break. Io, they're chanting for Io as Zayn fights to the corner, making the hot tag. Sky does a double missile dropkick springboard, and then the bullet train attack to Stark in the corner. And then Stark lands a released German, is put on the shoulders for a flying knee, and Baszler just whiffs on this flying knee. It completely missed. And I've got to say, the announcement, really, this goes for both WWE and AEW. I don't think they let any blow-in spots really get by anymore. They pretty much call them out almost for every time now. When I don't know if they got all of that one. This one you could just not even pretend. But Stark shoves Sky into the lap of Elba Fire, goes for a super kick, and Sky moves. So Stark super kicks Elba Fire and then eats a palm thrust, and then over the moonsault is delivered onto Stark when Isla Dawn attacks, and the match is thrown out in 8.5 minutes, and we are going to get a 3-way next week. And I think we are in overload right now when it comes to tag matches that end in disputes, and we just put everybody into the match.
Yeah. This wasn't a very, I would say, creative way of building to it. I thought the match had some blemishes, but Austin was a really kind crowd, I would say, to almost everything. So I thought it still benefited from pretty good reaction throughout. I think the storytelling has continued to be pretty weak, with this tag team division. It continues to be the weakest division in all of the WWE. And I'm disappointed because I think they were doing so much to try to set up Damage Control as this sort of renewed version of themselves. Yes, they're down, somebody because of the, down Dakota Kai, who is their mouthpiece. But I also think they just haven't done enough to explain, even while Dakota Kai was there, the basis of the babyface turn. Kyrie and Io are just wrestling these matches as if they're, straight out of Stardom. And they're the same Sky Pirate baby faces as they were before. And I I just don't think they've done enough character work. The promos feel the same. They're speaking English a bit more, but beyond that, they've given us no reason to want to actually cheer for them, to identify with them, to relate to them. And Shayna, Zoey, and Sonya, I'm glad that they're a thing and they actually have a team name, but I can't really say any of these teams feel intimidating enough. And then you have Dawn and Fire, who like are the least sort of intimidating champions of all in the entire company in quite some time. So a lot of work to be done. They're putting this one on television, and I guess to set up, the winners to face Jade and Bianca. Which, can you see a title change here?
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, because they are building the feud with Jade and Bianca and Dawn and Fire, so I'm guessing they win too.
Yeah, and then the champions laid out Kairi Sane with a backstabber swanton combo. Backstage, Miz is looking defeated as R-Truth walks up to him, and Truth asks him if he's still disappointed he didn't get a match in Cleveland at SummerSlam, and he then brightens up Miz's day by stating, "I got you an IC title match with Bron." And Miz is excited, but then he realizes, wait a minute, isn't Bron defending the title against Sami Zayn tonight? And Truth is like, that's you right there on the graphic. And Truth has gotten Miz a match with Bronson Reed.
It was either Reed or Strowman, and both of them would have worked for this segment.
So Randy Orton walks in, and he gives a motivational speech to Miz and goes over all his accomplishments. And Truth is amping him up too. Miz is excited. He goes off, and then Truth asks Randy if he thinks he actually has a chance against Bronson Reed, and Orton does not believe he has a chance against Bronson Reed, and he didn't. So Randy Orton comes out. Michael Cole says, this is how Randy Orton earned this title match, and we show highlights from the King of the Ring final where his shoulder was up, and this is how he earned this title match. I don't know if that's the word you would use.
This is how he's owed a title match?
Sure. So Randy Orton explains that it was 20 years ago this month that he won his first world championship. Wow. I came out into an empty ring and a title was bestowed upon me with no specific opponent, and I left as champion. I was anointed world champion in 2004.
Yeah, why didn't they replay that footage? I wonder.
No, they must not have had the clip queued up.
Right.
They didn't know Randy was going to reference that, or else they would have been on top of it. And now he's going for his 15th world championship. You never forget your 15th. And then Gunther's music plays, and out he comes. Orton says, I'm going to beat you. And then Gunther's Friday nights are not going to be free, and my new home will be on Raw. So we are learning that if you beat the champion on Raw, you then are drafted over, which makes Nick Aldis a pretty bad general manager.
I would say it's a pretty fair trade, don't you think?
Well, I mean, you're not getting, you're losing one of your top guys who's going to beat this guy that you're gaining.
Yeah, but you're getting Gunther.
Okay, well, you got Randy Orton.
Okay, well,
I guess it's a trade.
Yeah, and I believe somebody mentioned they explained this on the website last week, so it was already kind of like told. I'm at least glad they're going through the detail of explaining what happens.
You know now what the scenario is. They've thought this out, and it leads it to at least be a reasonable, like a believable outcome. You know what the stakes are.
Yeah.
So then Gunther states that, Randy, you are one of the greatest of all time, but you should be the greatest of all time. You wasted your natural talents and potential. It's a new era, and there's no room for people that waste their potential in this era. Orton, you will not play a role in this era. Orton says, I never claimed to be perfect. I made mistakes more than anyone else in the locker room, but I've owned up to them. I don't feel it's a curse. It's a gift, and I've done it my way. The American way. Like, what does that mean? And he's had 5 kids. He's got a hot wife, and I've done pretty well for myself. And the crowd starts chanting, USA, USA.
Is that the American way? I guess.
Yes.
Having 5 kids?
Having kids, having a hot wife, and a couple of wellness suspensions along the way. It's the American way. Gunther says, you said you're unpredictable. I think you're very predictable. I predict that I'm going to give you the beating of a lifetime. I predict you'll never be champion again because, Randy, whenever it really matters, you always screw up. Your grandfather was a screw up. Your father was a screw up. I was like, oh my God, are we going to get a Barry-O reference on WWE programming in 2024, Randy's uncle? But no, that was not the case.
Now would you agree with those two assessments like that?
As screw-ups?
Both Bob Ortons were screw-ups?
I mean, I would call that a bit of a stretch. I mean, Cowboy...
Were there screw-up moments in their careers that I guess are define them in any way?
I mean, I go back to the more recent Cowboy Bob run when it was discovered the man had hepatitis and...
okay, I guess
that was a bit of a screw
you
up.
could say that.
I would certainly say that if you're looking at guys that had more issues throughout their career, I think Randy would be
okay. Well,
would take the cake.
Gunther did say, Randy, you are the biggest screw up of them all.
I mean, this guy, listen, he has. I think it is quite something that this guy has reached this stage of his career. He is a remarkably more mellowed out guy than where this guy was 20 years ago when he was winning his first title. But yes, Randy, he calls the biggest screw up of them all. And before he can continue, Drew McIntyre comes out. And that leads to Randy hitting an RKO on Gunther. And then CM Punk jumps the barricade attacking Drew. And Drew tries to fight him off by taking off his belt. And Punk takes the belt and whips Drew over and over, sending him retreating through the crowd. And this was our Instagram post of the night, courtesy of Drew McIntyre, who looks like he took that scraping method that some chiropractors have introduced to the extreme. This, that looks nasty.
It looks like almost like a painting. It's remarkable. And of course he was sure to shut the bracelet off afterwards. Yeah.
So is this maybe our stipulation match, some sort of a belt whipping affair?
I would say leather strap match seems to be the indication, right?
That seems to be where we're going.
Yeah. So they blended both feuds into one segment here. And first, let's just kind of talk about Gunther. I thought Gunther was great again.
Gunther was amazing in this segment.
The man continues to make a name for himself now, not just obviously as one of the best wrestlers I think in the world, but he's on the microphone. He's somebody who is able to now find ways to hit people in their biggest vulnerabilities. He did that with Priest. We saw by calling him homeless street trash. I think he found a great angle here with Randy Orton, talking about him and his legacy, his him being the worst of all of his family members. I thought it actually allowed Orton to give us like one of the most real sounding promos we've heard from him in quite some time. To me, like I think Orton suffers from like maybe an over reliance on like the catchphrase, over reliance on just having like a pattern way of speaking that I'd never feel the authenticity that I get from like a Drew or a Cody Rhodes. But this allowed him to talk about something that I think, has been kind of tied to his character for his entire career, and owned up to it, and it kind of makes a good case for like, hey, I wouldn't change a thing about it. It's made me who I am. It was a great babyface promo from Orton, and coupled with a great heel promo from Gunther. And then we got Drew and Punk.
Yeah, this is a great segment. The one just bled into the other. And
I'll tell you, though, I hated that he managed to RKO Gunther, because I think Gunther did such a great job in previous weeks of talking about how nothing comes at me from out of nowhere. He said in this segment, Randy, you're not unpredictable. In fact, you are predictable. And I think I would have made it just a bit more of a challenge for Randy Orton to RKO him. Like he should have missed at least this time, or at least like attempted it, and Gunther just kind of like, just squeaked by avoiding it, just to make that first RKO feel like a bigger deal. Instead, I mean, clearly, he can hit it at will.
It was tough because you kind of needed an out to this interaction to get to the next one, and I guess
you could just leave.
He could, and then Randy's like kind of just left there with, kind kind of just looks silly at that point, just being left in the
I
ring.
just think about what you could have saved it for a bigger moment.
I understand that. I mean, they did make a point of that last week. Like, this was not a guy that you were going to be able to catch with this move. But then Jackie Redmond catches up with Sheamus first of all backstage, and this felt like one of those awful WWE promos from several years ago, where he starts it off by saying, "Jackie, I can understand a lot of mysteries, like how the pyramids were built, if aliens really exist. I could even give you Bigfoot's name and address, but I can't understand why Pete Dunne has so much beef with me."
Do you remember when Drew had that fairy tale gimmick?
Do I remember it? It was the bane of your existence for 6 months. You hated that thing every single week. That's what this felt like. This felt like some awful writing that Sheamus was given, some drivel that he had to recite. This was just
this is Sheamus's gimmick now. So now we know in storyline he's responsible for Butch. Okay, maybe Sheamus is just now sort of like, we know he has the taste of I guess Vince McMahon when it comes to professional wrestling creative.
Maybe Sheamus reveals, I came up with the Butch character.
Yeah, maybe he reveals he booked the invasion. And like,
okay, we're gonna retcon everything and put it on this guy's shoulders.
Yeah.
Okay. So he states that he tried to raise Dunne up, and then says, "I was out for 6 months with a neck injury. I didn't even know if I would come back, and now Dunne is making himself relevant off of my name." And before he can end, Ludwig Kaiser walks up and says it's not over between them. He will end Sheamus. And then Dunne attacks him from behind with a shillelagh as Kaiser watches and then blasts Sheamus's hand with the shillelagh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so he's got a bad hand now. He's got a German guy after him. He's got a British guy after him. I mean, I'm guessing maybe they're doing Kaiser and Sheamus for Berlin.
I could see that, yeah being the match they do. CM Punk is seen walking backstage, and he turns around and Gunther just storms past him. And Jackie interviews Punk and says, "You said you had travel issues, but we were both on the same flight, and I didn't have any delay." And Punk admits, "Okay, I told a white lie about having travel issues," and explains that he did that in order to get Drew to come out into the arena and wouldn't be worried about Punk showing up. He explains that it's not about the bracelet. It's the context. Coming from a man who I feel was very online last week reading reactions to his match at SummerSlam.
It felt exactly like that to me too. Like he was responding to all the criticisms that were out there about people who thought like there was too much focus on the bracelet in the match. I didn't think he needed to say this, okay? It takes away from the match. There are people who actually enjoyed it, like myself, and it just now makes the match feel kind of nonsensical, right? Why would he get, if it's not about the bracelet and it was only about the names, why would he get so mad at seeing Rollins just have it on his wrist? Why would he get so mad that he would let go of the Anaconda Vice just at the sight of the bracelet? I think it totally kills the match. It's okay. You could be obsessed with it because you're thinking about, all, like, it also takes away the moment of the eventual, whenever he will eventually get back the bracelet. So I didn't think he needed to walk it back like that.
What if they have this leather strap match and Drew brings a 12-foot bracelet with the beads, names? And that's what he wants to use as his whipping object of choice. That's how it has to end, doesn't it?
Sure. Maybe we're getting a bracelet match.
A bracelet match.
Yeah, they whip each other with the bracelets.
He says Drew is not allowed to say Larry's name without consequences. This won't stop until I get my hands on him. And Drew is running from a fight, but I've figured out a way to make everyone happy. And he never explained what this was, but I think this match is coming for Germany.
I'm thinking strap match, for Germany. For a second chapter, I think a strap match feels good. It promises to raise the stakes. It promises to be more violent than the singles match if Drew's markings after tonight are any sort of indication. And as a sort of like a precursor to what we're expecting to be a Hell in a Cell for Chapter 3, I think it's pacing this feud well. Mark
and Jacob Henry are showing in the crowd in Austin. And then it's time for The Miz with R-Truth in his corner against Bronson Reed. And Reed just runs him over, and he does the exact same rolling senton that Odyssey Jones was doing. And then hits a shoulder block off the apron. We go to commercial. Miz gets a comeback, which went longer than it needed, before Reed catches a springboard, hits a DVD, and a tsunami for the win in 6:39. But then Reed decides he's going to go for another tsunami. And R-Truth protects the Miz, and he's like crouched over, so Reed just comes off and crushes R-Truth with a tsunami. Then he climbs back up. He hits a second one. The officials are in. He's not stopping. He hits a third. He hits a fourth. Then they yank Truth away. Pierce is warning Bronson Reed, so you think he's going to leave. He climbs up the other turnbuckle and hits a fifth tsunami. As he goes to the floor, Pierce is screaming at Bronson Reed. The crowd is screaming louder one more time. And man, like Daft Punk, Bronson Reed hits one more time, and he squashes R-Truth with a sixth tsunami. I worry this man is going to be the most over babyface on this show by the end of this, because this was amazing. And I love what they are doing here with Bronson Reed. And if he ends up a babyface by the end of it, so be it. But this is tremendous.
Oh, this coupled with the video, I mean, yeah, and I don't think that's any sort of like threat that they're scared about. I mean, let's remember they very much did the same thing with Braun Breaker. They had him come in and do like very impressive and very well received repeated attacks, making Adam Pearce very mad. They're just giving the exact same push to Bronson Reed, and the goal is to just get the guy noticed, to get the guy, to let him garner any sort of reaction, and they're doing a hell of a job of that. The tsunami, you can argue, might be at this point the hottest finisher really on the show, certainly the one that's been focused on the most. The moment he climbs up, now the audience reacts like huge, and doing it to a fan favorite like R-Truth, I guess is a good follow-up. I'm curious to know how the Miz will respond to it, because I'm guessing he'll be secretly happy that this happened, But yeah, this was really, I think, a great follow-up to last week's angle.
Yeah, so this was another 10,000 pounds of pressure, and I want to know in the next Raw Physics video how many pounds of pressure Bronson Reed is absorbing on his knees at 350 pounds here coming down, because maybe he was like, you know what, guys, I have a really sweet DVD as well, and that could be pretty devastating as well. If we want to take maybe I do one tsunami.
I think he's probably grateful that he didn't start doing moonsaults, like Ivar.
Yeah, this is a hell of a finisher to have for a guy of this size. But man, these have been back-to-back great angles with Bronson. So, and in theory, like that should be removing R-Truth for, like, he's got to be gone as long as Rollins is after you do this. Yeah. Sami Zayn is warming up, and Jey Uso gives him a pep talk. He's going to win the IC title. Then they're going for the tag belts. And we had a Judgment Day promo. No leaders, no egos, no Rhea, and no Damian. And the name they're throwing around for Damian and Rhea are the Terror Twins. And Dom says, Terror Twins, you two losers are a joke. I don't know how I feel about Terror Twins. That sounds awful.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it either. You're already seeing them like officially recognize it. I think Rhea had like 2 T's drawn on her face.
God,
it is very corny. Yeah.
Liv says that no couple in the world compares to her and Dom, and Baszler warns Priest to watch out because backstabber Baszler is about.
Yeah, I don't think that sounded very cool either.
Yeah.
That sounded about on the level of Terror Twins in terms of I guess natural.
Isn't Carlito the master of the backstabber?
He is that too. Yeah. Maybe that's what he's well, okay. Yeah.
Carlito did not speak.
What?
Carlito did not speak in this.
And I think he was better off as a result.
Recovered from his match, though. Next week on Raw, the 3-way for the women's tag title match. Sheamus against Butch, and New Day and Odyssey Jones against Karrion Kross and AOP. Then Braun Breaker is walking towards the ring from the back and basically is mocking everyone who does this and says, this is not my style to talk. And I, use my actions to speak louder than my words. And he says, I'm a badass. It's time to do what badasses do, which is funny because that's what I say every day when I go out the door. And he's then looks into the camera and says, hey, Pat McAfee, do we have any dogs barking in Austin? And they are clearly, like, I think to your point just a few minutes ago, like, I think they are fully on board that this guy will be a babyface, and they're trying to elicit this reaction. Now, I didn't hear too many dogs barking in Austin, but
he done in the back.
Trust me, if you take some press boxes and this crowd, you'll be having people barking by a month from now.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about any of this dialogue that you've just recapped over the past 10 minutes of content. But
dude, this felt like 5 minutes of Vince McMahon produced television. Between this and the Sheamus promo, I mean, my goodness, there was some throwback stuff on this.
If the product wasn't doing so well, if this company wasn't so successful, and if these crowds weren't this hot, these segments could have fit somewhere in 2006, 2007. Like this is not great dialogue, but Braun's over, and when you're over, you can get away with. Do we have any dogs in the audience tonight?
DMX, Braun Breaker. So Breaker and Zayn, 2 out of 3 falls for the IC title. Early on, Tope Con Hero by Zayn. They go to a break immediately, and Braun is in control coming back. Clotheslines Zayn into the corner twice, and then he goes to the opposite corner, and Zayn fires away with a haluva kick and pins Braun to go up 1-0. Into the next fall, Breaker catches a moonsault off the barricade, and he runs and lawn darts Sami Zayn into the office chair in the timekeeper's area. This looked horrific for Sami Zayn as he just fell to his demise. We're getting chants back and forth. The Brakensteiner is hit by Braun, and then a spear. The straps come down. That means badass things are about to happen, and he hits a second spear to even things up at 1 apiece and gives us about 8-9 minutes for the final fall. And they go to the floor. The third fall was when the audience really got into things. I think the first 2 were kind of a formality, but by the third, the crowd was getting pretty loud. And Braun hits a flying clothesline off the apron onto the desk. Zayn struggles to get in at 9 and battles back for a sunset bomb, leapfrogs a spear, and rolls up Braun for a 2. And then after a knee strike, Braun runs the ropes into a boot, but Braun kicks out of that. Zayn goes to the top, headbutts Braun off, and leaps into a spear as Breaker pins him in 17:32, winning the match 2 falls to 1 and retaining the belt. Where are my dogs at?
Yeah. Great finish. Looked
the last fall I thought was really, like, the last 10 minutes of this were very strong.
Yeah, I thought, like, doing a 2 out of 3 falls match, I think it can be a challenge, especially when it's condensed to 12 minutes of TV time. But all people wanted, I think, was that sort of sudden death feeling, and I thought they achieved that. This audience really got into Sami Zayn's chances of winning this championship back, and by the end of it, I thought they gave Sami enough that he still looked very good, and I would say beloved in defeat. But it's a match that now moves them on to different programs. Sami to Jay with the Bloodline, and Braun now having won his series with Sami, I guess, on to something else, defending the IC title as now a very legitimate champion.
Does Braun fall into the pitfall of hosting a comedy show?
That's what cost Sami, right? Braun Breaker comedy? Yeah.
Maybe he feels, I'll prove that you can do comedy and be an IC champion for more than one show.
Sure.
Though after knowing where they're going for the end of the month, I want to see Gunther and friends do Berlin.
Oh, would love that.
Imagine. All right. Well, that was Raw. I would say not as strong as last Monday's show, but I think overall, like, this is the show that just feels has a lot more going on for it story-wise. I mean, SmackDown was a bit of a slog to go through on Friday, and that's one less hour. But I would say tonight, very good 2 out of 3 falls match, and I really enjoyed that Texas Tornado match with the Creeds and Alpha Academy.
I think they're doing a good job of building your stories. Like, I hate to say it, but Terror Twins versus Judgment Day, I think is garnering some incredible reactions. Both those two, as well as
The Pure Fusion Collective.
that not so much. I'm not as high on any of that. But I think even Kofi and Woods are starting to do something interesting now with their feud with AOP and Odyssey Jones, of course.
Do you feel in this day and age, after so much like with the New Day, do you think audiences will get into a Kofi Xavier Woods feud, or is that a program audiences are just going to reject because they do not want to see that program?
I don't know if that's the case anymore. I think they've been so lacking ever since Big E left the group. They just really have never been the same, and they needed to evolve, and they needed to change into something different from what I think made the New Day popular to begin with, and they haven't found it. So listen, the answer might not necessarily be them feuding with each other, but they need something fresh, and a feud at this point would be fresh. I certainly would prefer it over just a continued tag team as them, you know. Yeah. So,
well, there you have it, everyone. That was Raw from the Moody Center, and now we will open it up to you. If you want to send in a super chat, you can do so, and we're going to go to forum.postwrestling.com, where you can always leave your thoughts on the shows as soon as they conclude.
We got a super chat here from Muggin, who sends 279 Canadian. Thank you, Muggin, for the super chat. He says Julia needs to snap Roxy out of her ego trip.
Well, they've certainly planted the seeds for that one, and I imagine they will stay course on that. And her last match in Marigold, I looked this up, it is next Monday. That she has her farewell match.
Okay. Yep.
On to the forum we go, and we will start off with Muggin. Raw started off hot, and it maintained that pace from start to finish. Austin was lively. Tornado tag and 2 to 3 falls match were the clear standouts. Bronson Reed needed 2 weeks to look like a total monster. Those repeated tsunamis were a hoot, and the mixed tag with Rhea and Damian against Liv and Dom is the right move for Berlin. The Pete Dunne pre-tape essentially erased the scrappy deification of his persona. Deification.
I think it's bringing it back.
Well,
at least with the audience, they're going to bring it back.
I'm hoping we get chance of Butch. I also dug the improved presentation during the main event with the score, and those ringside cameras are so well utilized. Braun's pre-match catchphrase is going to get over real fast.
Are there any dogs in the audience tonight? Is that the catchphrase?
Where are my dogs at? Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Are there any dogs barking in Austin?
Yes. Okay. Anthony has a screenshot of what you were frozen on during our conversation. The best still. Thank you for that. Got a Matthew from Nashville. Austin, Texas. What a crowd. A great Raw that I enjoyed. A good flowing show that didn't have any filler. This is the loudest the crowd has been for Breaker 2. One thing about this regime is that they are giving people ample time to get over. I.e., if this was the old regime, New Day and Final Testament would have been axed months ago.
Oh, they've definitely given these two time. They've given them lots of time.
Arguably given them too much time. And they'd be relegated to main event or released already. They have kept it on TV long enough and figured out a way to breathe some new life into it with Odyssey Jones. This will most likely be a slow burn, with Woods eventually turning on the team. My question: see, people are expecting Woods to turn on Kofi, but I think it's the other way around, because I think
what's Woods done?
Nothing. He's representing
so
us.
Just communicate to me.
Yeah, we see something odd with this picture of how
something odd to see.
Very, very good, John. Yes. Kofi is the one that is like acting really strange, being over enthused about this Odyssey Jones guy. So I don't know. I think Woods might recognize what Cross is saying to be true, and Cross will laugh at, this was my plan all along, my 7-month plan to break you up. But I don't.
This is my 2-year plan to get screen time on Raw. After drafting me twice.
Yeah. I guess it's possible he does turn. My question is, wouldn't that make Woods... Okay, wait a second. My question is, wouldn't that make Woods the babyface? His partner has replaced a prominent member of their team and is constantly making decisions without his input and involvement.
Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Yeah. The pure fugitive collective sounds corny right now, but a lot of tag teams start off that way, and then it starts to get over. I have faith in the powers that be to achieve that.
I don't know if he's making a joke or if he heard it the wrong way, but pure fugitive collective sounds
that sounds kind of
way more menacing,
right? Regarding Asuka, she was injured back on the March 15th edition of SmackDown, and initially they thought she could rehab it, but she ended up having surgery in June. If I recall correctly, the European tour surrounding Backlash exacerbated it. She's 42 and has a lot of mileage on her body, so it's wise for her to take time and heal up. I understand they're trying to make Bronson Reed a monster, but the suspension of my disbelief is harder when there's 10 guys in the ring, and no one is trying to pull Truth or Rollins to safety. Yeah. And responds with that. Now, I did think about it, and I think the announcers could just explain. In situations like these, you're instructed to not move the person who's been injured. You don't know if there's neck damage. We're trying to they're trying to wait to get a stretcher out there.
They're also dead weight they're unconscious. You try and move.
10 people could do the job, I would say.
I don't know. These are very small officials.
But I do think maybe it requires some explanation from the announcers. Sure.
Last one from Brian in New Jersey. Solid Raw with two of the biggest segments being the greatest hits from last week, but all parties involved are still over. Braun Breaker getting the main event spotlight, and that first fall he took in his match should be the last pin he eats before the Netflix premiere. During the Final Testament New Day segment, Cross said, "Austin, do not insult me." Michael Cole thought Cross was referring to Woods. Oops, I see what he did there. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay.
4D chess. New Catch Republic, No Quarter Catch Crew, and now Pure Fusion Collective. I think it's best they're not called the Shooters, given the prevalence of shootings in the U.S.
That's true. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, I guess. I've still been following the G1 Climax results, and boy, does it seem like Naito owes quite a few title shots. Is there a possibility he will not be world champion heading into Wrestle Kingdom? I figure he's got minimum one title defense, if not two, before Wrestle Kingdom. You could take the title off him, potentially.
Who do you put it on? For me, like, it's the big question is, who can you headline the Tokyo Dome with?
Well,
on that roster?
I don't feel they are. I don't think they are going to take Naito out of that. Like, regardless of his performance in the G1, he is still arguably their top star that they have.
They might just let him rest, and with very minimal activity between now and then.
Yeah, like realistically, like he doesn't have to defend it in Kobe in September. You have King of Pro Wrestling at Sumo Hall in October, and that's probably where he does one. And he had like 5 losses here, so it's like you could come up with any challenger if you wanted. Maybe one at Power Struggle, but that's not always a given. And then that's it. Like and that's the tag league. He'll get the tag league off. He's not going to have to do that tour, and then you're there in January.
Yeah. Okay, let's say Naito, for whatever reason, doesn't make it. Who would you have as the main event?
Would this be the idea that it's a short term and someone's going to lose it at the Tokyo Dome?
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, who would be the one winning it at the Tokyo Dome? Who basically wins the G1? That's what I'm asking.
If I was in a perfect world, I mean, it comes down to who you like. I looked at this G1 as being like the winner of this G1 should be that guy, that one that you are going to go all the way with. But you're not going to have Uemura in there. I guess like Tsuji is alive. I don't think he's lit the world on fire with this G1, but I think, like, listen, if they wanted to go with Yota Tsuji, cool, go with Yota Tsuji. That's what I would like lean towards. In a perfect world, it's Takeshita coming out of this thing, but I don't think that's that's kind of the good and the bad of Takeshita in this tournament is that I don't think you can build long term around him.
I guess just looking at the field of names that you have to choose from, if we're looking at the G1, like somebody from the G1 to headline the Tokyo Dome to guarantee X amount of tickets possibly being sold. I mean, who would you say is the next biggest name other than Tetsuya Naito of this area? Sanada? Like, no. That's a huge drop. Is Zack up there? Is Shingo up there? I this is all to say, I think Naito is holding the title until January 4th.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you all for your feedback tonight. And that's going to wrap up the show. But yes, we have a super week of shows at Post Wrestling. Just, we are overdosing on great shows over at postwrestling.com. That's how just fueled we are here on the site. Tuesday, we've got Up Next coming your way. And then Wednesday, Pollock and Thurston, Rewind to Dynamite, and Way will be joined by Kate from Montreal for the G1 Climax, day number 16. So check out that. Wai and I are together on Thursday for the quarterfinals, and then Saturday, semifinals of the G1, and then Sunday, the finals with Bruce Lord, Karen Peterson, and WH Park. And then the week is capped off with the NWA podcast. So check out all of that on the site, and we thank all of you for joining us. And Wai, any final words?
Everybody, just enjoy and have a great Tuesday if you're listening on Tuesday or whenever you're listening to this.
And a happy birthday to Oscar.
Yes, I will let him know. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.